Good morning. It's the fourth Sunday of Easter, and today we hear the story of the Good Shepherd as our theme this morning. And so I've got our banner behind me, the Good Shepherd banner from St Mark's Church. I thought it'd be nice to share that with you and just to think about what it means to listen to the voice of the Good Shepherd. Just some words of Jesus from John chapter 10. Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate of the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." Or another translation, life in abundance. I became a shepherd the other day. It was an impromptu thing. I was out on my bike, okay, and I was cycling down the road. I was out by Hackness, out that way, and as I was cycling down this road, I was cycling past a field of sheep, and as I approached the gate of the sheep field, I could see the farmer was trying to usher into the field some sheep that had got out. There were about 3 or 4 sheep that had been escaped from the field. So I stopped and I waited because I thought I'd best to stay out of the way. I didn't want to disturb what he was doing and frighten the sheep. So I went and I sat back and I watched and the farmer, this old chap, sort of gathered his sheep. He gathered them up towards the gate, and there was the guy who'd driven in his car. He'd done the same as me. He'd stopped and he was waiting as well. And this farmer sort of gathered his sheep with his staff and he gathered them up, got to the gate, opened the gate, and just as he was about to go in, 2 out of the 3 sheep went in completely opposite direction. So they started heading off in a different direction. So the farmer was like this, he was going, uh-oh. So he left the sheep, hoping one of the sheep would go into the field, and he went to gather the other 2 sheep, and that was his mistake. Because as soon as he left the gate open, not just did the one sheep not go in, but 4 or 5 other sheep decided to escape at the same time. So the farmer's out there getting the 2 stray sheep, and by the time he's reached them, there's about 5, 6, 7 sheep just wandering around on the road. So it was at this point I decided to offer my help. So I said to the farmer, "Do you need some help?" And he said, "Oh, that would be marvellous." He said, "Thank you very much." So he said, he looked at I was on my bike, and he looked at my bike and he said, "Oh, you've got wheels. That could be helpful." And so he implied that I should go down to the far end, beyond the stray sheep, and to usher them in. And so he went to the gate. In fact, the guy who was driving the car, he'd done the same thing. He got out of his car. He stood by the gate. The farmer stood on the other side of the road to make a pincer movement. And I, on my bike, went beyond the sheep and started gathering these sheep together, using my bike, weaving them in, sort of making sure they didn't get any past. And I was like this, using my bike in a very effective way. And we gathered these sheep. We heard, not was going to say heard, not heard. We shepherded these sheep towards the field, and this other guy opened the gate, and the shepherd just encouraged them in to the field. It was beautiful. Poetry in motion. That's what it was. And the guy said to me, the farmer said, "He, sort of, a travelling shepherd. That's just what I needed today." I said, "Anytime, give me a call." So that was great. The question that I had in my mind as I was cycling away that day was, what were the sheep thinking as they were escaped out of the field? Where were they going? I'm sure it gives sheep too much credit to think they actually think they thought anything at that moment. They were probably just thinking, "Hooray, we're free." But imagine if they could think. Imagine if they'd got out and they'd had these options of life and setting out on a different journey. What would they think? I imagine it wouldn't be too long before they thought, "Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the purpose of wandering down this lane?" And they also would have thought about, where do we find our food? Where do we find shelter? What do we do with our time? What are we going to do with this freedom that we've got? These are questions that we might all ask. We all have those questions about our life. We're given this life, these years, have the freedom to choose how we live our lives. But how do we use the time? Who do we listen to? If we listen to the world around us, there's a myriad of voices that tells us that you can do this and you can do that. You can live your life any way that you want to live your life. And some people want to live their life for shopping or consumerism. Others are materialism. Others are power or wealth. Others simply live for their families or live for other things like sport and musical excellence and sporting excellence. All sorts of things you could focus your life on. How do we know who to listen to? Whose voice do we listen to? Jesus' voice, the voice of the Good Shepherd, speaks to us in the midst of our lives. It's a voice that speaks. It isn't a voice of religion. It's a voice of the love. And Jesus speaks to us in the midst of our lives, a voice of love which offers a life of peace, of joy, and abundant life. I love the story of Jesus. I listen to the voice, and I've tried to follow the voice of Jesus, or the Good Shepherd, all my life. And the thing that I like about Jesus and I like about his voice is there is a freedom. There is a freedom about Jesus, and he doesn't force us. We're not a religion where we are told this is how you live your life. These are the rules and the constraints of this religion. But Jesus instead simply says, follow me. Listen to my voice. I love that image of the gate being Jesus being the gateway. And if you listen carefully, those who follow him can go in and they can go out. We are not sheep confined to a field, but we are given the freedom to flow in and out, to follow Jesus or not. The other thing about Christianity for me and the way about following Jesus is it is unique for each of us. Each one of us hears that voice in different ways. There is no one type of Christian. And I like that. If you look around the world, there's so many types of church and types of the way Jesus has shaped people's lives in different ways is unique to each person, not just each denomination. And I like that because Jesus calls us. He calls us. He doesn't force us. He doesn't coerce us. He simply invites us to walk with him, to listen to his voice, and to allow his voice to shape us and mould us into his image. Isn't that wonderful to think that each one of us is a unique manifestation of the living Christ? Over the last few weeks, we've thought about what it means about the resurrection. So 3 weeks ago on Easter Sunday, we talked about trusting that Christ is alive, that Christ is risen from the dead. 2 weeks ago, we talked about Thomas and the idea of stillness and being attentive to the very voice of God. And then last week, we talked about bread, didn't you? If you remember, we talked about how we break bread. And in breaking bread, we experience God's love and his sense of communion, of community. But also how we are encouraged to offer our lives, to share who we are, to reveal the risen Christ in the world. Today we are simply invited to listen again and to respond to the call of the Good Shepherd. We are invited to listen afresh to his voice. Think of the words of George Herbert. Come my way, my truth, my life. Such a way as gives us breath. Such a truth as mends all length. Such a life as killeth death. May we, as we seek to walk the way of Christ, to listen to the voice of the Good Shepherd, may we hear his voice in the midst of our lives. May we walk together on that journey of faith, and may we discover afresh where Christ will call us and lead us in our lives. Amen.